In this video, we will be learning how to find the area of a circle. We've already learned how to find the area of a rectangle, square, parallelogram, and triangle, so we're now moving on to the circle. There's some important vocabulary involved with the circle. The first word is diameter. We also have radius, and the other important word is circumference. So when it comes to the circle, we have diameter, which is a line that goes across from side to side in the circle, across the center of the circle. So if this was the center dot, we'd want that line going through the center dot from edge to edge. It doesn't have to be left to right like this. It could be up and down, so we could turn it to go from top to bottom. Just making sure it's in the center, so we'd want to move it over a tad. If it'll move over for me, there we go. And we definitely want it to go to each edge, so we'd have to pull this line down a little bit. So it could go up and down like that. It could also go diagonally. So as long as it reaches from one side to the other side of the circle through the center, that is considered the diameter. Then next we have the radius. The radius is half of the diameter. So if we were to set this up in our circle in exactly the same spot as the diameter, it would only reach to half of that line. So what we say for the diameter is that it always goes from the center of the circle to any outside edge. So we could go there, we could go there, we could go there. It can go to any edge as long as it starts in the very center of the circle here. So that is called our radius. And something about the radius and the diameter is that the radius is always half of the diameter. So if we said that the diameter equals 10 centimeters, we would then have to say that the radius equals 5 centimeters because the radius is always half of the diameter. Or if we said our radius was 3 centimeters, we'd then have to double that to get the correct diameter. So our diameter would be 6. So for the diameter, always cut it in half to get the radius, or if you only have the radius, double it to get the diameter. So let's bring these over and label our parts of our circle. We've got the diameter, and we've got the radius. I'm going to have to make that a little smaller because remember our radius is the shorter line in our circle. Okay. And then now we've got the circumference. Circumference is the distance around the outside edge of the circle. So all the way around, however many centimeters that is, or inches, or meters, or whatever we're measuring, and that is called the circumference. What I'm going to do now is take you to a vocabulary page where you're going to be able to write down some of these definitions in your notebook if you choose to do that. So here's some of our circle vocabulary. Like I said before, the diameter is the distance across the center of the circle from side to side. Then we have the radius, which is half of the diameter. So if you want to write that down, that the radius is always half of the diameter, that's a good reminder for you. And that's the distance from the center to the outside edge of the circle. Circumference is the distance around the outside of the circle. We have one more really important vocabulary word when it comes to the circle, and that is the word pi, P-I, not to be confused with the dessert you eat. Pi is a symbol that looks like this, and it basically just represents the number 3.14. To be more exact, this is the actual number it represents, 3.1415, all the way down this line. We would go crazy if we had to enter this number into our calculator or set up a lattice problem. So what they do is they round it off to the hundredths place. So again, pi is just a math symbol, and it represents a number, 3.14. Okay, here is homework question number 1. The question is, if the radius of a circle is 4 feet, what is the diameter? I wanted to talk really quick about pi on your calculator. There is a button on your calculator for pi, so if you press it, you don't have to enter 3.14 into your calculator. It's just automatically going to know that that's what it means. So that key is right here on your calculator. You can see it's kind of small, but it looks like a pi key. And so when you want to use pi for finding the area of a circle, you can press that button if you have your calculator available. Some other ways that you might see pi is like this and like this. It doesn't always have those cute curly tails. You might see it like this or this. So remember, those are still pi. Homework question 2. The diameter of a circle is 9 centimeters. What is the radius of that circle? So now we're going to move into practicing finding the area of a circle. You can see here we have lots of different circles, big ones, small ones, different shapes, different sizes. Well, actually all the same shape, just different sizes. In the area, if you guys remember, is the space that takes up the inside of a shape. So we're going to use a formula, just like we used a formula for rectangle, square, and parallelogram, just like we used a formula for triangle. Nothing's different with the circle. We're going to use a formula. So remember, we had base times height for these shapes. We had half of the base times the height for a triangle, because a triangle is, of course, half the area of a rectangle, square, or parallelogram. And down here now we have the formula for circle. It's a little bit funny looking compared to the ones up here, but let's go through it. So up here it is written in words, and the formula to find area of a circle is pi times radius squared. And down here we have a shorter, easier version of what that looks like. We have the pi symbol right next to an r squared. So when we have a symbol or a number next to a letter, that means to multiply. So when you guys are entering this into your calculator, you can press the pi key and then multiply sign and then radius squared. So let's pretend the radius of a circle was 2. Or, you know what, let's go with something trickier. Let's say 13. So half of that circle from the center outward is 13. What you would put into your calculator is the pi symbol, or 3.14, either way. You could press the button or type in the number, and then multiplied by, and remember this squared is an exponent. We know that that means 13 to the second power, 13 squared, which hopefully you guys remember does not mean to do 13 times 2. It means to do 13 times 13. So this is really important when finding the area of a circle, because if you entered into your calculator 13 times 2, you're going to get a completely different answer as if you would have correctly squared that number by doing 13 times 13. So an easy way to enter this into your calculator, if you have the pi key and the squared key, would be pi times 13 caret 2. So let's go back to that calculator really quick so you guys can remember where the caret key is. The caret key is right here on your calculator, and you can use that to square numbers, to put numbers to the third power, the fourth power, the fifth power. So remember that handy dandy key when using the squared in this formula. Here's homework question number 3. The question is, what is the same thing as pi? And there may be more than one answer. So read your choices and enter your answer onto your Google form. Okay, we're now going to get into an actual problem where we're solving the area of a circle using our handy dandy formula. So what we need for this formula is we need to know what the radius is, or what r is. Looking at this circle, we have a diameter of 8 and we have a radius of 4. Perfect. That's all the information we need, and they're giving it to us. So we're going to use this 4 as part of our formula. So if you have a normal calculator that doesn't have the pi key and doesn't have the squared key, you're going to have to enter it in the old-fashioned way. So we're going to take 3.14 and we're going to multiply that by 4, our radius, so the r, and we can't forget the squared part. So most of you know what 4 squared is, or you can think about it. 4 times 4. 4 times 4 would be 16. So now what we're entering into our calculator is 3.14 times 16. So let's go ahead and put that in and see what we get. 3.14 times 16 equals 50.24. So the answer to this problem is 50.24. And we can't forget, every time we're working with area, we need a label. So we're going to label this correctly, centimeters squared, if I can spell squared right. And we can make this smaller so you guys can see what it looks like. If I had that handy dandy squared key, I would just put a little 2 up here, but that's hard on my calculator. So we've now correctly found the area of a circle, and we have it correctly labeled. So let's move on. Let's try another one. Now what we notice on this circle is that we've only been given diameter. It doesn't have our radius here for us. So we have to think in our head, how are we going to get that radius? Because that's what we need to solve this circle. We have to have the r for our formula. So thinking back to when we talked about vocabulary, we know that the radius is half of the diameter. So if the diameter is 24, we know that the radius is going to be 12. Half of that. So into our calculator, we're going to put pi, which is 3.14, multiplied by radius, which is 12. And we can't forget the squared part. Remember, we're not doing 12 times 2. Squared means to multiply the number by itself. So some of you might know in your head already what 12 squared is. But if you didn't know what it was, you could always enter it into your calculator by doing 12 times 12, which is 144. So what we're actually entering into our calculator is 3.14 times 144. So let's go ahead and put that into our calculator. 3.14 times 144. And that's going to give us our answer of 452.16. Of course, with area, we have to label it correctly. So we're going to label it with millimeters because that's what our label is, and we're going to square that. So there's our answer. Homework question number 4. So go ahead and solve this in your notebook and enter it on your Google form. The question is, what is the area of this circle if the radius is 3 inches? So go ahead and go back, use your formula, and enter this into the Google form when you have the answer. Homework question number 5, a little bit different. And this one, it gives you the diameter. So you're going to use, this is going to be a multi-step problem. You're going to need to use the diameter to find the radius to solve the area of this circle. So the question is, the diameter of the circle is 10 millimeters. What is the area of the circle? Last question is a challenge question, so I would like everybody to try the question, or at least write down how you think you would solve the question. The problem is the area of a circle is 314 meters. What is the radius of that circle? So in this problem, they've given you the final answer. They've told you what the area is, 314 meters. So you're going to have to take some steps backwards to figure out what was the radius in order to get an area of 314. So good luck, do your best, and thank you for doing your homework. We'll see you tomorrow.